Happy 4th of July again to everybody. Belated Happy Canada Day for all of our Canadian listeners. I still maintain for all of us who live along the 49th parallel here that we should just declare an Independence Weekend and celebrate together. I mean, it happens de facto anyway. Canadians come here to watch fireworks, and sometimes we go there. Oh, well. Anyway, a week ago, our producer, Steve Schiller, and his wife, Tamar, who, by disclosure, also happens to be my daughter, traveled to New England on vacation to see some of the places of the American Revolution, including the Old North Church in Boston, you know, one if by land, two if by sea, the battlegrounds of Lexington and Concord. These places usually have plaques commemorating the brave souls who died in the cause of overthrowing tyranny. The colonists had experienced many years of abuse at the hands of King George, and they decided they had just about had enough after trying to be reasonable with a most unreasonable king. Many of them were willing to give their lives in that cause. And later on, many of the same people came together to frame a constitution and its Bill of Rights. Bill of Rights is one of the most important parts of the Constitution, clearly designed to limit the power of the federal government, but not of the state governments. And many people today seem to have forgotten this. You know, in one of his talks, President Obama said that the unfortunate thing about the Constitution was that it asserted all sorts of negative rights. He wanted to assert positive rights. Well, most people probably didn't recognize that, but this was a radical departure from the worldview of the founders and falls more closely aligned with the positive philosophies of Europe, which I might point out have gotten them into some of the big mess in which they find themselves today. What is the difference between the two? Negative rights clearly delineate the boundaries beyond which government must not tread. Remember, in free societies, the laws are limited and very clear. In dictatorships, the laws are many and vague, so anyone can be guilty when they have to be. The reason for negative rights is to contain the amount of interference that government can assert in people's lives, and beyond those boundaries, you're free. That's it. Everything's open for you. We are free to pursue our lives in search of happiness or wealth or whatever is of significance to us. This was a tremendous promotion of freedom and liberty. As Jefferson pointed out on the Declaration of Independence, rights are something we just possess as the right of being humans from our Creator. In order to have these negative rights, so to speak, nobody has to do anything. They simply exist. The only thing that really has to happen is to keep that pesky old government and all of those bureaucrats and all of those rulers and politicians to stay out. They're simply assigned a particular area where they should be. The colonists wrote this into our foundational laws because they had experienced all of this abuse, and the Bill of Rights was designed to prevent all of the governmental abuse they had experienced before, all of the injustice, unfairness, improper imprisonments, you name it. Now, positive rights, on the contrary, they're sort of open-ended. The problem is they seem to require for one party to get his rights, another party loses their rights. For example, if someone has a right to health care, we're being told nowadays, free health care, as a matter of fact, does the health care simply happen? Are the doctors going to do it for free? Are the drug companies going to do it for free? Are the hospitals going to do it for free? No, somebody has to pay for it. Somebody has to work for it. Somebody has to provide it. Somebody has to be compelled to provide those rights and perhaps even be forced to give up their rights in order for someone else to have their rights. That's why we're in the quandary today of right trumping we hear about all the time. Founders never intended this. Meanwhile, the rights we do have are being assaulted by both the left and the right. We have freedom of speech, but by various mechanisms of threat and coercion, that freedom is now under severe duress, notably from the left, whether it's being shouted down, shamed, fired from a job, dragged off a website, dragged from a room where a flag-folding ceremony is happening when a speaker mentions God, as happened on an Air Force base a couple of weeks ago. They look like thugs doing it. My gosh, that's what the colonists fought to prevent. Right to free speech is under heavy duress. Remember, a free society has to have free speech. Corollary to that is freedom of religion. We're being told that conscience shouldn't apply anymore, that the overarching teachings of the state should prevail over everything. The founders would have found this absolutely repugnant. As a matter of fact, the list of when our rights don't apply anymore seems to grow longer and longer every single day. And our Constitution and the Bill of Rights are suffering a death by 1,000 small blows. And very soon, the rights just simply aren't going to apply at all because, yep, you'll have those rights, but the list of does not apply, Well, it'll prevent you from getting to those rights. Think I'm stupid? Let me show you. The Ninth Circuit Court just ruled that a person doesn't have a right to carry a weapon concealed. Well, it says the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. And the state of California has thwarted that complete provision in the Constitution by simply making it so difficult for a person to do that. This is that death by 1,000 cuts, that it's impossible for people, ordinary citizens, to defend themselves. But the state legislature in California has exempted itself from those limitations. Notice today, politicians are always exempting themselves from what they're telling us is good for us. That is the real tragedy, that the courts, oftentimes law enforcement officers, the military officers, refuse to uphold the rights in the Constitution that they take an oath to uphold. In essence, the very document which guarantees our freedom is being shredded by both the left and the right for whatever their own pet causes happen to be. So, as we celebrate 4th of July this weekend, remember that if the rights in the Constitution for which those very brave patriots at Lexington and Concord and the battles that followed and the battles that we fought in the Civil War to achieve other rights for groups that hadn't had them, such as slaves, you know, the groups that fired the shot heard around the world, Lexington and Concord, if we don't uphold these rights, then everything they fought for will have been in vain. And to be honest, you're not going to like the world you wind up with, because we've seen those dictatorships before, and there are many forces in our own society cheering on the onrushing dictatorship for whatever reason they have. There are many forces that hate the idea of the type of government we were given back in 1776 and what followed. So, whether freedom survives in our country is a battle which will be determined by you and me and probably our children in this generation. The battle is upon us, but so many are still asleep and don't even understand what the battle is all about. Here's the bottom line. Will the 4th of July continue? Oh, yeah, probably. Boom! Ooh! Ah! You'll still see the fireworks, but you'll probably be watching them from your jail cell. We're at SteelOnSteel.com. I'm John Leffler. The program is Steel on Steel.